Hey y'all, I just got home from getting my hair done. Shout out to Rebecca, who is Hella Heart the Hair on Instagram. You should give her a follow. But I'm settled in, I got my blanket, I got some water, so let's talk about the role of the Catholic Church in the Spanish Civil War. So, this is a big topic. I don't know if I'm going to be able to cover it in one video, but I'm going to give it a try. So, the role of the Catholic Church in Spain, I think, is fairly unique to that country. There's very few countries that have as close a relationship with the Catholic Church as Spain does. The Catholic Church is a deep part of the Spanish identity. So, it's not just a religion, it is also part of their national identity. Part of the reason why it's part of their national identity is that unlike a lot of other Western European countries, Spain in the modern era had overthrown an Islamic empire that was ruling them from 711 to 1492. So the rest of Western Europe had not had an occupying force of another religion the way that Spain had. So when Ferdinand and Isabella conquered Spain and throughout the Arabs and Berbers who were ruling, they used Christianity as part of the justification for that war and part of the reason why they were chosen by God to rule over this land. So they really framed that conflict as Christianity versus Islam. The monarchy of Spain brought that same brand of Catholicism with them to justify their colonial efforts in North and South America. And they absolutely used the conversion of the native peoples of the Americas as part of the justification for them going over there and doing terrible things and stealing all their money. So in exchange for lending its legitimacy to the monarchy and supporting the monarchy in saying that all of this was ordained by God, everything the monarchy was doing was ordained by God, the church enjoyed preferential status in Spain. It was the national religion. You couldn't get married unless it was in the church. Your divorce was not legal, which was what the church wanted. And the church was not taxed within Spain. And beyond all of these strong ties that the church had with the monarchy and with the landed class in Spain, the church was also very important to the people of Spain. It gave them comfort, and they embraced it as part of their national identity for the most part. People in Spain did feel closely aligned culturally with the Catholic Church. Part of that was because they did have that history of occupation that the rest of Western Europe did not have. So they had this feeling that the church saved them from this occupation by this foreign conquering power. I think it's interesting to note that when the Protestant Reformation happened and there was tensions in a lot of other European countries between Protestants and Catholics over reforming the church, those tensions did not exist in the same way in Spain. They did not have a strong Protestant movement because the national identity was so strong and because the church was so strong within Spain. But the problems that brought about the Protestant Reformation still existed in Spain, within the church in Spain. They just pushed those problems into the 20th century. So what were the problems with the church? So the way the Catholic Church was set up, and at this time period there was one Christian church, it was the only Christian church, and so when I say Christianity or Catholicism, it's the same thing until after the Protestant Reformation. So the Protestants saw a bunch of issues with the Catholic Church. Number one was the way that the church was structured. You had to have a priest speak for you to God. So your average parishioner in a church, your average farm laborer, even your average lord, they could not speak directly to God. you had to have a priest speak to God for you. And as you can imagine, if you have a situation where you can't speak directly to God and you need an intermediary, that intermediary is very powerful. And there's a lot of room for corruption there. The other piece of it is that the Catholic Church hoarded wealth. One of the reasons why they went forward with their priesthood not marrying is because if your priests marry, then they have children, and they might want to pass down some money to those children. So if you have a priesthood class that does not marry, that means that any money that those priests bring to the church stays with the church. And also, honestly, they saw in this time period that this idea of a celibate priest class wasn't really happening. Popes had children, priests had children, bishops and archbishops had children. Everybody knew about it. Like, they had whole ass families in villas in the countryside. It was just not talked about. But you live near these people, you see it. So ordinary people started to see this, and they're like, you're saying that you're celibate, but you're not. You're preaching these specific things, but we don't see it in the way that you're acting. Another thing that really rubbed your average person the wrong way was the fact that the church would sell what they called indulgences to wealthy people. And what an indulgence was if you paid the church a certain amount of money, they would guarantee you entrance into heaven. So Joe Schmo landowner would go to the priest and say, hey, I murdered this dude, but here's a couple thousand gold doublets. And the priest would say, okay, I'll talk to the Lord about that for you. I'll talk to Jesus about that for you. You're good. Now, it usually wasn't quite that overt, but what it would tend to be around would be something like the church would need to raise some money, and so they'd be like, hey, we've got some indulgences for sale. Come on over. If you've got a sin, we can clean that up for you. So you can imagine, as your ordinary people are coming to Mass and they are there with the wealthy people, and they are seeing that there's different treatment, and they're seeing the way that the church has these beautiful golden candlesticks when they don't have food to eat. They can see that the way that the church is presenting themselves is not the reality of what's going on. So now you come to the era of the Second Spanish Republic, and all these issues that in other countries have been addressed by the Reformation are still alive and well and festering in Spain. And so when the Second Spanish Republic came to power, they were very, very overtly anti-Catholic. They set about to disempower the church. They took marriage and divorce and made it a matter of the state, so you could just go to the courthouse to get married. You didn't have to get married in a church. They opened secular schools that were not teaching religion. They removed Catholicism as the national religion of Spain, and they started to charge the church taxes. All of those are, I think, very needed and very understandable secular reforms that were overdue in Spain. However, things got darker, and I'm going to have to do a part 2.